Hi, I'm David Shuck, and welcome to Blowout, the show where we explore one thing, from watch caps to flip flops or what have you, and tell you all about why it's important, where it came from, how it's made, who's making them today, how to take care of it, and the real reason you're here. This show automatically came on after something you liked more, but now you're on the highway and you cannot change it from your phone. But that's alright, because today we're talking about loafers. Those do-nothing idlers who just sit around all day, and the leisurely leather shoe that's come to be named after them. Yes, I'm talking about the penny, talking about the tassel, and even talking about the horsebit. These footwear icons might seem like timeless classics, but they are the result of a relatively recent cross-cultural exchange of mutually beneficial cultural appropriation. So slide in, slip on, and get ready for a relaxing ride along Loafer Lane. Firstly, what is a loafer? As I said, we all know that they are layabouts and malingerers, but what is the shoe? So, definitionally, I would say a loafer, the thing that we're talking about today, is low cut, so below the ankle, generally does not have laces or just has one lace, usually is made of leather, has a rubber or leather welted sole, usually Blake stitched or Goodyear, or at least it's trying to look that way if it's cheap, so it's pretending that it is welted. The vamp, so that covers most of the top of your foot. So that means that there's one piece of leather that basically starts at your toes and ends in a semicircle at the top of your foot. And that it also has a gathered toe stitch, also known as a mock stitch, meaning you can see it on the outside of your shoe. You can see the edges. This is basic stuff. Guessing you have something in your head already, but hey, we all got to be on the same page when you can't use pictures. So, where did this loafer come from? And it's kind of a complex answer, but the straightest line starts with a guy named Nils Tvaringer, which, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that. The TV sound at the beginning of a word is one that I'm unused to, but Mr. Nils was born in the late 1800s in the Aurland region of Norway, which is a fairly rural area on a fjord in the middle of the country, but at the time it had a lot of shoemakers in it. And the shoe they made was called the Tessa shoe, which was this elfish slipper kind of thing with a horn like bend in the leather of the forefoot, very Legolas coated. Or maybe like if Legolas baked cookies, that's more like what the Tessa shoe would be appropriate for. But Nils, being groomed to take up the regional shoemaking business, went to America on a shoemaking apprenticeship in 1908. In the US, he was inspired by Native American moccasins made by the Iroquois people in upstate New York. So these moccasins wrapped around the whole foot and had a separate vamp that was hand stitched to the toe. And they often had beadwork embellishments all over the moccasin. And Nils just thought this was super cool, so when he returned to Norway, he tried to meld his Norwegian roots with the Iroquois style, and the result was his first attempt at what was known as the Aurland shoe for that region of Norway. I gotta admit, it was kind of weird. He didn't exactly get it right the first time. It was this little Lord Fauntleroy looking thing, kind of a high heeled job that you would imagine the King of France wearing, except it had laces and these small star shaped designs embossed into the leather. But Old Nils didn't let the first one get him down. His second effort in 1920 was far more loafery, and it had a gathered mock toe, the low heel, and no laces, more of the traditional loafer that we know of today. And he patented that and started producing it in the Orland region. But even though there was a patent there, there is a competing English theory that a maker named Wildsmith Shoes designed a loafer on King George IV's request in 1926. But that one doesn't necessarily hold water because English royalty had been vacationing in Norway for a while to go salmon fishing at the time, so they may have just copied what was already in existence over there from the Arland shoe that had been produced for over 5 years at that point. So I'm giving it to Tvaringer, with an assist from the Iroquois. But regardless of how it came to have its signature design, the loafer once invented was a big hit. In the years between the World Wars, members of the so-called Lost Generation, see Ernest Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald and co., found themselves incorporating exotic fabrics and designs into their wardrobes, and these Norwegian loafers resonated with them as they began trickling back to America. The first mention of them in American press was in 1934. Men's magazine Esquire noted that the Norwegian peasant slipper was appearing on many feet abroad, and the sudden appearance of similar slip-ons at many of the country's trendiest locales during the summer season. And if anything is trending, you can bet that American businessmen were quickly moving to capitalize on this new trend. So retailer Roger Peet and representatives of Esquire contacted shoe brand G.H. Bass about making a domestic version of the Norwegian loafer, which they did, and the shoe arrived in 1936, now named the Weegeon, Weejun, as in a misspelling of Norwegian. I'm sure Nils Tvaringer was really happy to see that bastardization of his country's name from his creation. But Bass's most important addition to the loafer was the addition of a crescent slot on the leather band across the loafer's upper. It had just been, a plain band before that. And people, for some reason, started putting pennies in these slots, aka the penny loafer. No one really knew why they started putting pennies in it. One of the ex post facto explanations is that people started putting dimes there for payphones in their shoes, so if they had to make an emergency phone call, it was there. But copper pennies were put in later for purely aesthetic reasons. We don't really know why. If you have a better theory, please let us know, but I could not find one. So, American consumption of the Norwegian loafer, though, or the Norwegian style, was similar to Japanese conceptions of American blue jeans. That it was not a peasant shoe in the US. The loafer was being worn by intellectuals and resort goers, and not people that were, out there farming salmon. And the loafer soon found its way onto college campuses. So, college students, no matter the era, are notoriously frugal, and the loafers that were made at the time were cheap and held up well, and they were easy to wear just trekking across campus. That you could just slap them on and head out the door. But that changed this sort of bohemian look of the loafer when the students grew up and took their places in some of the most powerful industries of the nation and kept wearing their loafers. But more on that in a minute. At this point, it's when we start to get some variations on the loafer. The first significant addition was the tassel, which is credited to Paul Lukas, a Hungarian actor you may know from Watch on the Rhine, where he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, or a minor role in the Hitchcock movie The Lady Vanishes. But Lukas found a pair of tassel shoes while abroad and wanted someone to reproduce them when he got back to Hollywood. He asked Brooks Brothers, who in turn asked their shoe supplier Alden, who then developed the first tassel loafer design, which instead of the penny strap, there were these two jangly fringe leather ornament bits that were connected to a leather lace that wrapped all the way around the heel in leather eyelets. So the first wave of these shoes arrived in 1952, and because Paul Lukas, guy who won the Academy Award for Best Actor, was the inventor and progenitor of them, they became very popular amongst Hollywood's avant-garde. But that cool did not last for long. By the 1980s, tassel loafers came to be pejoratively related with elitist politicians, lawyers, and businessmen. So much so that during the 1980 presidential election, George H.W. Bush complained that Ronald Reagan had bested him in a debate in New Hampshire by using unfair tactics. And one of Reagan's aides retorted in a widely disseminated remark that those with Mr. Bush's private school pedigree were generic sore losers. The exact quote is, "Those tassel loafered guys always cry foul when they lose." So yeah, that became the loafer epithet, going from something that cool Hollywood actors wear to George, like even Ronald Reagan, arguably one of the more evil people in the last century, was dunking on you for wearing those shoes. But the trajectory went to even further cartoonish lengths when far-right French activists started wearing tassel loafers. Got a quote from a piece here that John Vineker, the executive editor of the International Herald Tribune, said that the shoes were worn, actually flaunted, by young rightists in the mid-1980s who wished to demonstrate their distaste for the French socialist government. To them, the preppiness of the shoe represented American prosperity and free market conservatism. Thus, it became part of the battle uniform of the young soldier of La Contre-Révolution. That all became blurred, though, Mr. Vinegar said, when many French leftists soon followed suit and abandoned sandals and other proletarian footwear in favor of the tasseled loafers. Quote, "It helps them get better tables in restaurants," he said. So, yeah, that's the tasseled loafer. I don't think it's really outgrown that stodgy Reaganite, or more like Bushite, I guess, like the New England uptight businessman look. But the next offshoot of the loafer came from Europe with a different strap accoutrement. This time it was the horsebit. As the story goes, Italian fashion magnate Guccio Gucci worked as a bellhop in the fancy Savoy Hotel in London in his youth. And while there, he learned how much rich people love horses and pretty much anything associated with them. So when it came time to design a loafer for his eponymous brand, Gucci, he and his son Aldo thought, hey, let's just put a horsebit on it. Now, Guccio died before the shoe was released in 1953, but what he and his son created is arguably the most recognizable loafer in history. And they still sell it pretty much unchanged as the 1953 horsebit loafer for a little over $1,000 at Gucci. And the final classic loaf we'll get into today is another Italian that came in 1963. Footwear designer Gianni Mostile stripped down the loafer to a slim leather slipper and replaced the leather or rubber sole with an array of tiny rubber studs glued onto the bottom of the foot and then up the back of the heel. So, such a sleek, loungy looking shoe provided the perfect companion to a new generation of sporty little Italian cars that had tiny footwells and even tinier pedals to become known as the driving shoe. Gianni Mostile, he named his brand very, very straightforwardly the Car Shoe, which was acquired by the Prada Group in 2001, and you can still buy them for about $800, these tiny little driving slippers. So, there you have it. The loafer has gone full circle from Native American moccasin to Norwegian peasant shoe to university intellectual to finally this studded suede foot condom that you have to wear to operate your Ferrari. Truly a shoe for all and all for the shoe. So, if you want to try your own set of loafers on for size, a lot of the makers mentioned before are still making them today, including the one in Arland. So, we've got Arland Shoes, Arland Schoen, which is the home of the Tessa shoe and our buddy Nils. They still make a classic penny loafer in their old home of Arland, Norway. They have two models, including a variant which comes with a traditional oxidized silver buckle on the strap, and they look really cool. They've got sort of a rough and tumble angularity to them that are not a lot of other loafers that I've seen have them. They start at 2,600 Norwegian krone, which is about 250 on their site, or you can find them at No Man Walks Alone in the US. The next one is GH Bass. They are still making Weegens by that same misspelling, but their price is approaching $200 and they're not welted and they're not using full grain leather, and I really don't think they're worth the money unless you can find them on a pretty crazy discount. So if you want to spend about $200 on a pair of loafers, I would 100% steer you to Meerman, who are using full grain calfskin and high quality tanneries, and all their loafers are Goodyear welted so they can be resold. They are made in China, and I've handled several pairs, and the quality is really, really high. They've got pennies, horsebits, tassels, and more, and they're a Spanish company, so their designs are sleek and more European styled. The loafers start at about $215 on their site, with shell cordovan at $350, and they do have occasional sales. If you want the more rustic American hand-stitched feel of a moccasin, I would point you at Rancourt, which are made in Maine, hand-sewn, and they have a variety of leathers, including shell. This is the kind of loafer that I would see you wearing like on your boat. They've got leather and rubber soles, and I've had a pair of their Blucher mocks for over 10 years now, and I have been extremely happy with them. They are perfect for like the running out of the house shoe that you just sort of step into when, the dog is about to pee on the carpet or something like that. They start at 280 and they have lots of different designs that are on sale on the site though. Next up, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the OG originals of Alden. As I said, they invented in developing the tassel loafer, and they're probably the most waspy Americana you can get with their hand-sewn leisure mock. Like, I'm guessing that George H.W. Bush, when he cried foul at Ronald Reagan, was wearing an Alden. as they are made in Massachusetts, all welted, and they are pretty pricey though. The calf models these days are around $700 and shell is about 900. You can find them at J Press and at Lost and Found. For a similar style and quality for about half the price of Alden, though, you can look to Grant Stone, which are also made in China on Xiamen Island. And that's where founder Wyatt Gilmore spent a good portion of his life developing a relationship and production method with the factory. Loafers there start at about 400 on their site, and they have a lot of the same designs. All the brands talked about are linked in the show notes if you want to give them a closer look. So now that you know the brands, how do you wear and style loafers? And that's the beautiful thing about them, is that they are probably the most versatile shoe in existence. You can wear them with jeans, you can wear them with shorts, or even jean shorts, all the way up to wearing them with a suit. It just sort of spans the entire range of formality. On dormant menswear blogs, you can find a million pictures of JFK on a sailboat wearing penny loafers with white socks and khakis. Or on an entirely different set of dormant menswear blogs, you can see James Dean riding a motorcycle in jeans and a leather jacket. But by the same token, you could wear those with a double-breasted pinstripe suit like full Gordon Gekko. The spectrum of formality is going to be the same with most footwear. The rougher the material and the hardier the construction, the more casual it's going to read. So, like hand-sewn loafers made of pull-up leathers will go better with jeans, and daintily stitched calf skins will go better with formal wear. In terms of styling, like, and difficulty styling the variations that I mentioned, driving loafers, just don't wear those. Those are for bloated old perverts who stall their Lamborghinis in the valet line at Monte Carlo, and they still don't tip probably. So just leave those for them. It is a sort of joke of a shoe that will be uncomfortable to walk in, and the studs will probably start flipping off of them after about like 2 or 3 miles of walking. Penny loafers, on the other hand, those are the easiest and probably most classic of anything. So if you're in the Americana vein, that is where I would go, and that's probably the most options that you're going to find at any different price point. Horsebits have more flash to them and kind of a European looking feel. Like, think Ralph Lauren Purple Label, or obviously any of the Italian fashion houses that make them, like Gucci. Tassels, those have kind of a stodgy air to them now, which I think is why they're probably due for a comeback. But the difficulty level is higher. We had some Solivare tassel loafers that we had in the Heddle shop a few years ago, and those just flew out the door. I think they would look good with like big chinos and a Coogee sweater or something. Think about like George and Jerry's parents on Seinfeld. That is more the tassel look. It is very much in the grandpa style vein. But yeah, I still think they're due for a refresh. Caring for loafers. Caring for them is similar to most other shoes made of leather, but with some caveats. There's really two schools of loafers, and they have different care methods. If they're unlined and have rubber soles and are made from a pull-up leather like Chrome XL, you can treat them pretty rough, and they're going to patina and age and look really cool and beat up. Wear them pretty much anywhere in any condition, and you just have to brush them clean and hit them with maybe a little bit of saddle soap and mink oil when they get really dirty to moisturize them. And if they are welted, like all the ones that I've mentioned so far, you can send them back to the manufacturer when you run through the tread for a resole. So if you're in the other camp and they are leather soled, made of calf skin, and lined, these need to be handled like dress shoes in order to live a full life. Avoid water at all costs. Put shoe trees in them when not wearing them, and try not to wear them too many days in a row so they can dry out and revitalize themselves each time. If you wear a pair of dress shoes too many days in a row, then they just stay wet and then they can start to mold and mildew. Then you're going to want to polish and moisturize with a shoe cream like Saphir or Paul Brungard if they're calf, and you can just brush them if they're suede. But like the rubber soled, you can just send them back to the manufacturer or to a legitimate cobbler when the sole is getting thin, and they can get a resole. And a shoe like this can last you, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years. My dad has had a pair of leather loafers that I think he has some Aldens he bought in the 80s, and those are going on like 40 or more years old. So yeah, if you take care of your loafers correctly, they can live a really, really long time. So even though some of the prices that I was rattling off was pretty high, you can get a full life out of them, and the cost per owning them per year is quite low and quite reasonable. So yeah, that is just about the end piece of our loaf on loafers, and also the end piece of this first experimental season. So thank you for listening and learning along with me. If you liked what you've been hearing, please let us and other people know. Our email address is blowout@heddles.com, and we're also getting our Discord fired up again, so you can bother me directly if you like. Link for all that will be in the show notes as well. But yeah, thank you. This was a fun 5 episodes, and I hope we will be back for more soon. Today's episode, though, featured writing from the Lowdown on Loafers from America to Norway and Back Again by Albert Muskies, which is on Heddles.com, and the production talents of Sean Thornton. So thank you very much for listening, and until next time, keep it real and keep it raw. Bye-bye.